So we'll be starting with you, Fraser. Can you give us like a bit of a background into what the state of uh, fraud in financial services looks like in East Africa right now?
So talking about fraud, definitely the numbers have gone higher. I mean, more people are leveraging on technology. And as they leverage on technology, then definitely the numbers are definitely gonna be higher. We're seeing a lot of startups, a lot of fintechs, a lot of banks being able to leverage on technology, but how are they doing it? Are they doing it in a way that they can be easily compromised? And with this compromise, there's loss of information, loss of data. People are also being able to use fake, if I can call it, data or fake IDs and the likes. A good example is within the past few years, we've seen uh, using fake IDs and fake fraudulent transactions and the likes. Yeah.
Interesting. So, okay, that's an interesting one. Thanks for that initial background. So we'll go deeper into the conversation and see how it interplays, especially with regarding document fraud and fake data. But I also want to get a picture from Bamidele. Hi, Bamidele. Can you give us like a background overview of the situation
Okay.
in Nigeria and West Africa?
Okay. Hi. Thank you, Emmanuel and Fraser. Hi. How you doing? Nice to meet you. Nice to meet every other person on this session. Apologies, I can't see everybody's name, but just to say welcome and also to say thank you to Emmanuel again for inviting me for this session. As much as possible, I'll try and share my own experience that I have. I may not know everything, but I'll just give as much information as I can. Yes, to your question, and I think Fraser has really more or less dwelt on it because, again, with the advance or advancement of technology, new things happening, so many things are happening in the financial space, and we see a lot of things happening, especially concerning this topic, fraud in the payment space. And the truth is, the numbers keep increasing year on year, and it's not far-fetched. Let's take Nigeria, for example. The reason is, again, the drive by CBN and also the payment system and the OFIs as a whole. You want to bring more people into the payment space, You want them to do more transactions. You want them to be more financially savvy and all that. All that leads to more increase in more transactions, increase in more businesses, increase in more payments. And because that is happening, the ecosystem is also growing. Businesses are growing, businesses are expanding. It also means that these bad players, yes, the bad players will want to take advantage of the situation. And because of that, you will now find issues of more people experiencing more fraud cases. There are more people trying to beat the system. There are more people trying to take advantage of the system. And so it's only natural that the numbers keep increasing over the years because more players are actually coming into that space. So it's the same thing like Fraser has mentioned in his own part of the world. Same thing happening in Nigeria, same thing happening in West Africa as well. Thank you.
All right. I think that's a really succinct introduction to the whole issue. So before I ask my next question, thank you so much, Bamidele. Before I ask my next question, I also like to introduce my co-host. He's joining me in this session. He's managing editor of the sister publication, Energy in Africa, Cyrus Ademola. Cyrus, you can just unmute and say hi. Of course, we'd like to see your face too. So, but for those who don't know, Energy in Africa, Finance in Africa are sister publications to TechPoint Africa. TechPoint has a massive decade of covering technology in Africa. And we've covered a bunch of sectors. And what we're doing with Tech Finance in Africa is to go into these sectors very, very, very deeper and just expand what it means to cover industries in Africa. So we're under the parent company called Business Front. So if you see Business Front is responding on the chat, and yeah, Cyrus, can you say hi to us?
Yeah, hello. Good afternoon and wonderful conversation so far. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you, Manuel, for the webinar. It's been a robust conversation. I'm looking forward to more insight from our speakers. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Cyrus. Yeah, so we're talking about the fraud being on the rise, the use of technology, and the drive for cashless. So in recent years, we've seen in Nigeria, West Africa, we've seen um, agency banking explode in Nigeria, and a lot of people are adopting cashless products, cashless services, and interestingly, it seems that fraud is also on the rise. So instant transfers is increasing, agency banking is increasing, and fraud is also increasing. So is this inevitable? Can you paint a picture of what's going on in this instance?
Is that for me or is that for Fraiser?
It's for you, agency banking in Nigeria.
Okay, I think your question actually addresses some of the things that I noted or mentioned before, because the truth is the ecosystem is growing. And so 10 years ago, we didn't have, or 10, 15 years ago, we didn't have agency banking. And we had more of ATMs and people walking down to the ATMs and also trying to get cash from the ATMs. But these days, we have agency bankings, we have the POS merchants everywhere. We don't need to walk to an ATM anymore to go pick up cash. It's part of the advancement of technology. Even back then, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, we had fraud instances on the ATMs as well. The truth is, like I mentioned before, as businesses increase as there are more transactions, as we bring in more players into the ecosystem, because agency banking is also one of the strategies that CBN wants to use to get more people into the ecosystem and also to reach the last mile as well. You see more transactions taking place in the system, and you find players that will want to try and beat the system. That is the truth. Because of that, again, and because people are also trying to game the system, it only means that as you bring in these new channels, as you bring in more players into the system, you at the back end that is providing the services or championing or powering this agency banking or the bank branches or every other channel, you also need to ensure that you fortify yourself to ensure people don't try to break into your system. So let me put it's a war that will continually take place. It's a war that is continuous. Somebody is trying to get into you and you ensuring that you keep protecting yourself. So we're going to see it keep on happening, like I mentioned. But again, the players on the other side will also keep upping their game to ensure that people don't try to get into their system. And over time, I believe we will win the war against the people trying to come into the system, as long as we do the right things, we implement those right strategies, and people adopt those strategies that the providers of these financial services actually encourage them to do, and we will have a much more better system. Again, like I said, the incidence it's like you actually mentioned as well. It's high, and as long as they keep getting higher, providers like us and also providers like the banks and the agency banking companies as well will always fortify their game to ensure that people don't break into the system. And I think that addresses your question, unless if there's another part you also want me to talk about.
Yeah. So I think I think it addressed my question. There's a part I'm going to address when we go deeper into the discussion. But I would like to get the perspective from East Africa. East Africa has been like the poster child for mobile money in Africa, with M-Pesa, and of course all the other telcos have also been competing in terms of mobile money. So, what does it look like when it comes to what are the fraud techniques that are targeting mobile money ecosystems, and what security measures should providers be prioritizing right now? So Fraiser, this question is for you.
Yeah, I think there's quite a lot that we've been seeing. Number one has been SIM swap fraud. Given that fraudsters are able to duplicate SIM cards to be able to gain control of mobile wallets of other individuals, reset authentication credentials, and them being able to reset these authentication credentials is because there's no centralized database that already has authentic data. For example, if we need to be able to verify whether a specific user is alive, is present, they are who they say they are, without this lack of a centralized database, then we can't be able to verify is someone who they say they truly are. And are they still alive? Let's even start from there, because majority of these people pick SIM cards from or swap SIM cards with SIM cards of those who've died, or use registration details of those who've died. That's one of the things that we're seeing. The other thing also is USSD interception attacks. Malicious actors basically being able to exploit vulnerabilities with these USSD servers and systems and be able to even take over these USSD-based transactions and transfer probably more than what they have in their account. Another thing that has really been big that we've been seeing is especially with the financial institutions, that malicious actors are able to withdraw funds more than that which they have within their bank accounts or their various wallets. And this is because of attacks such as, for example, the what's it called? The reverse manipulations, response manipulation, whereby they manipulate the responses that are going to the servers to authenticate if a specific transaction is to happen or not. So those are some of the things that we're seeing. However, even with this, then we're seeing also organizations and financial institutions try to harden their various environments and various entities through things like vulnerability assessments and penetration testings, which I feel should be mandatory to each financial institution, because that's the only way they can be able to stay ahead of the game and stay ahead of the fraudsters. The other thing we're also seeing is, for example, being able to do things like bug bounty programs. Very few organizations, especially within East Africa, are now leveraging on bug bounty programs to be able to stay ahead of the game. An example is Safaricom. Safaricom is I think the only financial institution within the Kenyan and East African space that's leveraging on bug bounty programs for hackers or researchers out there to be able to say that, okay, we've gone through your system, we found a specific bug, and I know of specific researchers who've been able to go even the extra mile and even get paid because of this research to be able to help address these fraud situations and simulations that are happening. Also, social engineering scams are also becoming quite big. The art of human hacking, users are getting hacked, and so even as they get hacked, they're losing quite a huge chunk of their finances. Yeah. Hope that answers your questions, Emmanuel,
Yeah.
and hope
Yes.
does enlighten. I know there's quite a lot to go into this, but hoping that in future, that even with the centralized databases and systems, that we'll be able to get rid of this fraudulent transactions. Yeah.
So I'm actually curious, why is there what is holding up centralized database? Is it a lack of regulation, or is it lack of cooperation between financial institutions?
I think this starts from a government point of view. I think if financial institutions and government organizations are able to communicate and offer even API endpoints that are able to read from government systems so that we can be able to say this person was identified as person XYZ, they are alive, this is who they are, and they are verifiable, then it can make even this easier for financial institutions. But then because of the lack of proper infrastructure with governments, then we're still gonna see these cases being on the rise because we're seeing lack of proper communication between financial institutions and government institutions. Yeah.
Interesting.
Manuel,
Yeah.
let me just add to that. And for Fraiser talking about identification, I think that's one of the things over in Nigeria to an appreciable level we've been able to get right. If you know, for example, some years ago we started out with BVN. It was hard, it was hectic. We know what we went through for it, going back time and time again to try and get the BVN for your account. But we got that. And then later on with NIN, all the back and forth with NIN that we went through, then to do with your SIM and all that. But at least to an appreciable level on the part of identification, though not perfect 100%, but I think that is something that we've been able to get right in Nigeria. So with the name, you can link to your BVN and also tie to your SIM. So you know who is using this account, who is using this number, who is tied to this BVN. So something occurs, even if maybe identity may have been stolen, but you know where it initiates from and where it's ending, and then you can actually have a trace. So I think that's one part that I think we've been able to get right in Nigeria to an appreciable level. I said, let me just add that since Fraiser raised it up. And then again, he talked about, okay, VAPT is making that you need to ensure that, yes, organizations, they also implement it in their environment and ensure that they carry it out. Again, that is also what I can say that based on regulations as well from the regulatory bodies like the CBN, that's banks, other fintechs, as long as you play in the OFI space, that you're supposed to do this regularly. That's something else that the banks also have as well. But there was something he mentioned, and I'm actually happy that he mentioned it. And so he says Safaricom. We are actually piloting that. And I think that is something I've not seen it play out in the open, but I know internally they do that in some organizations, the bug bounty programs. I think that is something we need to learn from East Africa and with what Fraiser is saying. I think that is something we need to learn and see how we can actually carry out such programs in our own areas, as in our own region, and see how we can push for such things to actually be out there in the open for people to know that, yes, this can also aid the ecosystem and also ensure that in aiding the ecosystem, everybody benefits from it. So thank you, Fraiser, for mentioning the bug bounty program. I think that is something we should learn from East Africa as well and see how we can push that more in our own markets. Thank you, Fraiser.
Right. Thank you so much, Fraiser. Thank you so much, Bamidel. I think I already like the synergy that's going on, lessons to be learned on both sides. Hopefully we can make this a physical get together at some point and have an even more intimate partnerships and conversations. But yeah, so I'm actually curious, right? So Nigeria's technology, so this question is to you, Bamidele. The technology infrastructure, financial infrastructure seems to be solid. But what are we still, you mentioned the bug bounty as something that, okay, is something that has to be exploited. But we're seeing a lot of fraud from, for instance, FITC said that's the federal, one of the bodies that launches fraud reports on the Nigerian banking sector. You've seen a lot of internal fraud attacks from the from internal employees and all of that. So is it that we've focused too much on technology and neglected the human side of things? What is going on with the internal fraud risk in Nigeria?
Thank you for the question, Emmanuel. So one of the first things I learned in my early days in IT, and that everybody needs to put at the back of their minds is this: no matter let me say how robust technology may be, there's always a saying that what will go wrong will always go wrong or will go wrong. So you can't say 100% because we're doing technology, then we have everything covered. It's actually Murphy's first law. And it says anything that can go wrong will go wrong. Yes, technology is there to help. But again, you also need to understand this technology we keep talking about, it's us as human beings that still make use of these technologies. The technologies don't operate on their own. It's still us as human beings that make use of this technology. So we should, first of all, keep that at the back of our mind. And because we as humans that we're the ones that operate these technologies, also know that based on Murphy's law, anything that will go wrong will always go wrong. Let's have that for starters. So talking about, so you mentioned, yes, the report from FITC, which is the Financial Institutions and Training Center, where all the banks, more or less, they subscribe to and ensure that they use that more or less as a training center, as a guide for bank workers and things around that activity. Yes, internal issues. The internal issues for me, they're not in isolation because everything internal still dovetails into the organization that you work in. So anything happening in that within the internal environment is based on the organization's, let me say, the strategy and the way they want to work. So in pushing anything internally, it has to be something that the organization has agreed that this is what we want to do. And in doing that, we look at and say, look, how can we, for example, really reduce these fraud issues that we're talking about? The thing is, yes, technology is key. And we've seen in Nigeria, a lot of organizations, they've actually invested in technology, not only in Nigeria, in Kenya as well, and almost every part of the world. We've invested in technology, but those technologies will still be worked on more or less by human beings. And the human beings are internal, the human beings are external. So it's not only good to be dependent on technologies alone, but again, internally, even the people using these systems internally, you also need to ensure that you put strategies in place whereby they don't also manipulate even the technologies that they actually use, that they are using to provide services for the end users, the end customers. Could be for the end customers, could also be for the internal customers. And or rather, there are several ways to do this. For example, if you set up a system in place, you need to say, for example, have you put in the right authentication policies that for people that are making use of these technologies internally to provide services to the users internally and also the users externally? Have you put in the right authentication policies, the right authentication methods? Do you have two-factor in place? Do you have access control in place in ensuring that people that want to make use of these technologies, they are actually the right people that have been profiled to have access to every part of the technology that they want to use? That is one. Again, even in making use of these technologies internally, do you ensure that people making use of these technologies, they follow the rules in making use of these technologies? If you say, for example, these technologies need to have regular updates, they need to be patched, they need to meet a certain standard before they can actually be released out there for users to make use of. Are those things being adhered to by the users internally? That's another angle that you need to look at again. Again, how do you monitor the people making use of these technologies internally? We're talking about internally again. The people making use of these technologies internally, do you monitor what they actually do with these technologies? Do you monitor what access they have to these technologies in providing services to customers outside, to customers inside as well? So continuous monitoring is also very key. Then again, the data that they are accessing, do you ensure that the data they are accessing, if somebody is not the right person to have access to that data, does he see the data raw the raw flight, as in the data is raw to him, or is the data encrypted when it comes to him? And then for him to have access to it, he needs to be able to decrypt it. So those are some of the things you also need to look at internally in ensuring that people that are internal consumers of technology, they are actually doing things the right way. And then you also need to ask, are there anomalies happening internally for these users? For example, and a simple anomaly could be, so maybe we have a user in the system, it could be a new user, which can happen. You've profiled him, and maybe his access rights should just be maybe view only. But maybe somewhere along the line, when he was being profiled, he has admin rights. Could that be an anomaly? Could that have been done on purpose? Even when you profile him to have admin rights, is there a check and balance somewhere that before this person has the final full right that is approved by someone else? Those are some things that you also need to also see. Then again, data logs to see each person in the system. That goes into monitoring. If you see that today this person's right is view access only, then by tomorrow he has editor access or he has admin access. That's an anomaly. So have you checked your data logs over time based on continuous monitoring to actually ensure that, yes, this that is happening, that it's not supposed to happen? And there's one part I want to talk about again, and I think I'll round up with this for internal. I'll say consumer education, but consumer education can be both ways, external and internal. But even the internal guy is also a consumer. He also needs to be educated regularly on the things that he's doing internally, so he knows the impact to his own sphere in the organization, whatever it does, how it impacts his own space, his own sphere, and whatever it does, how it impacts the organization globally as well or externally. So he must understand everything that he's doing, and he's not just doing it because he wants to, as we say, fulfill all righteousness. There are impacts based on decisions that each person takes. And when you take those decisions, how does it impact the organization? How does it impact you? Those are things that need to be considered internally. I don't want to talk about the HR part, but again, that is very key. Recruitment, like I mentioned today, yes, we have NIN, we have BVN tied to your SIM, and then you can trace anybody that to an appreciable level that you want to trace in the country, even with the law enforcement agencies. Recruitment, when people are being recruited, organizations, I know they do that, they need to do the proper checks and balances to ensure that the person that we're recruiting has not been found wanting in another area or another place where he was formerly employed before we bring him into such a sensitive position. So in areas of recruitment, that's another issue internally that the internal players also need to take a look at and see, yes, people that we're recruiting are actually the people that are the best, they are fit to do the job, and they've been cleared to ensure that they come into this organization. I think I'll just stop here for now concerning that, and I think Fraiser can add some more to that too.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Bamidele, for all those insights. Definitely agree with you. I think just one thing to add. I mean, even as these financial institutions continue to do monitoring, vulnerability assessment, security checks, and the likes, one thing that we're not seeing really happening across majority of the financial institutions is being able to have that data sharing. Being able to say, for example, if they find a specific vulnerability or they find a specific issue within the environment, they're now communicating with each other to say, for example, if Bank X or financial institution X found they were being hit through a particular endpoint or particular methodology, or being hit by a particular malware or ransomware group, they need to be able to share with other players within the same field, because that exactly is the same way that they will be, other institutions will be hit across the same industry. Yeah.
I
Thank
think
you.
sorry, Emmanuel, before you come in, I think I should also address that point that Fraser raised. It's very key, and it's also a challenge in Nigeria. There's this I don't know why would they would like to work in silos. with the information sharing is a big challenge and it's a big problem, because what ends up happening is if bank A or organization A has been hit, because he's not shared the information with his contemporary in organization B, the same strategy will be used to hit organization B as well. So this information sharing is a big challenge. And Emmanuel, if you recall, when we had another interview about 2 years ago, I still mentioned this, although then I mentioned that I knew a group of people that were coming together to see how we can make sure this information sharing becomes much more better across the industry. As I speak, we are still pushing that initiative and we are still trying to push it. Of
Even
course,
2 years
you
later.
also 2 years later, you also know one of us as well. We discussed about him last week. He's supposed to be here, but he had another engagement. He's actually the one driving that initiative, and I can tell you it's been difficult. It's been difficult, but I know that is something that will really help, and it will reduce these incidences that we currently face to, in fact, more than between 20 to 50%. It will reduce it almost by half as long as you share that information. Somebody goes quickly and he goes ahead to try and just fix his own problem as well before they try to hit him. So information sharing is key, and it will help in curbing a lot of the internal issues too.
Something just hit me while you are talking. Also using AI. I mean, AI has come. So many institutions are leveraging on AI. So using AI-driven fraud detection mechanisms to be able to monitor various transactions and patterns across the various systems to be able to detect these anomalies and even respond to them ahead of time. I mean, these systems are becoming faster, becoming smarter. Then leveraging on AI is definitely something to be able to try and enhance within the various institutions, because I mean, this is game changer. If something can be able to help you do your work faster, I mean, why not take it in to be able to do your work 10 times faster than you probably would have been doing? Yeah. Thank you. Over to you, Emmanuel. Sorry for taking over.
Emmanuel, let me see hold you a little. Since Fraiser has gone into technology again and talking about AI, I think you have an AI question somewhere down the line, but since it has come up, so I think it's also good to also open it up. Yes, the truth is we cannot shy away from it. We cannot run away from it. The truth is that AI has come to stay, and with AI also comes ML as well, machine learning and all the things around there. AI has come to stay, and everybody has to embrace it. And as Fraiser has also mentioned, that yes, a lot of the banks, a lot of fintechs are also looking at working towards that part as well. And also us as an organization as well, we are also doing that based on our experience over time in this industry too. We've actually done something on that part, but that's one part of our platform. And then we're also working on something too that we believe will also help this particular topic that we're talking about now. And again, it's going to be focused on AI and ML. We're working on that, and very soon we'll also let people know how far we've gone on it. But we're working on that seriously, and we hope to do something as a game changer too on it.
Okay, so I think regarding the AI issue, permit me to be contrarian a little bit. So either Fraiser or Bamidel could address this, but is it, I think the word is AI in terms of the African situation, right? Yes, we know AI is good. AI is very, very important. AI needs data to really, really thrive. So is the data ecosystem in Africa, I know the data is there, but will it be made available to actually make the AI work in the way it's supposed to? So it's me just questioning a little bit how effective AI would actually be in the African context.
Fraiser, you can go first. Let me allow you go first, Fraiser.
Is Fraiser there?
Okay. Fraiser is frozen.
Yes, yes, possible.
It's frozen. Okay. So your question, let me address your question. So you think yes, the data exists, that maybe the data may be in silos, and will people be
Yes.
willing to share the data? But the first thing I'll tell you is this: there is so much pain in the ecosystem, and you are aware that there's so much pain in the ecosystem. So if somebody is in pain and he sees that there's relief for his pain, the person is willing to share that data. I tell you, we have this analogy that we use back in Nigeria, that you take Panadol for another person's headache. This is not the case here. This Panadol is for your own headache. So on the issue of people sharing data to fix this problem, I can guarantee you and I can bet you that yes, based on interactions and based on what we know and based on what we are also doing, people are prepared to share data. And as of today, there are actually some organizations that have deployed some tools. And in deploying those tools, they need data to work with. And the OFIs, they have actually provided such data for them to work with. So the issue of sharing data is not a challenge when it comes to solving problems like this. They will share the data. The only thing, like we mentioned, is I'll try to talk about is working in silos instead of working collaboratively to reduce it. But I believe again, over time, that will end. But sharing of data will be made available.
Cool. I think that you've allayed some of my concerns regarding the AI in the financial services space. Is Fraiser back? I don't know if he's been able to connect.
His video is still off. Fraiser, are you back?
Yes, I don't know whether you can hear me clearly.
Can hear
Got
you now.
disconnected for a minute.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
no worries.
I think I missed a huge chunk of the discussion. Sorry.
Yeah. So we're just talking about the efficacy of AI and when it comes to financial institutions in Africa that don't tend to share data. So how effective will it be? So Bamidele made an interesting point that it's a pain point that is affecting everyone. And if there's a technology solution that can help resolve the issue, a lot of these guys are going to comply. So yeah, that's just in case you want to make any comment on that.
I don't think I have much to add on to that point. I think Bamidele has spoken quite in length in regards to that.
Okay. Now now to you, I wanted to ask, like, what is something payment teams or financial services companies have been doing before to combat fraud that is no longer working, and that you think these guys should update and try to do better?
I think being able to stay ahead of the game through security assessments and security audits, I mean, this is the only way that you'll be able to know probably how are the players being able to stay ahead of the game, or the fraudsters being able to keep up with you. I mean, being able to perform 24/7 monitoring within your environment alone is not enough, because the fraudsters will definitely look for other ways to be able to bypass.
Hello, Fraiser, can you hear me?
Even your monitoring solutions that you have to have both internal and external security auditors within your environment. I don't know whether I broke.
Yeah.
We can hear you.
We can hear you now.
Okay, perfect. So I was saying that being able to stay ahead of the game. So doing security, not just internally, because your internal security auditors are definitely not going to have a look at other places or have that exploratory mindset. Then having an external team to be able to come and do, because that gives you a different way of being able to view these attacks and these simulations, because I'm sure the external personnel are definitely also doing more research, more extensive research to be able to know, okay, how a guy is going to hit you next. They are doing, for example, us at Cyberguard Africa, we have a team that purely does research in regards to how these fraudsters are trying to be able to stay ahead of the game. And with the various financial institutions we've worked with, then we are able to know the next steps that they're going to be hit, and we're able to combat that and help them combat that even before that gets to happen. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Bamidele, I'll come back to you right now. I wanted to ask, so it's financial services, right? A lot of companies are chasing KPIs. They have sales targets to make, and they have to acquire a lot of users, and they have to make the process as seamless. If I even look at banking sector right now, if a bank starts telling me to fill this, fill that, I'll be like, you guys are stressing me. I just go to one fintech and just so. But for the banking sector, for financial services companies or OFIs in general, how do we balance that user experience, customer acquisition, and still secure the plan? Still make sure, okay, this is safe. This is yeah. I think you get what I'm trying to ask.
So, sorry, I'm laughing, but trying to understand the scenario you're trying to paint is like you want to, let me say, get a benefit immediately. You want, and then say later on, let me go and endure the pain ahead. That's the kind of
This year they say this is the year we eat our cake and have it too.
okay. No problem. No problem. Eat your cake today, then go ahead and then you enjoy the pain. If you remember, I'm using the Nigerian scenario. Remember some years ago, CBN had the policy about different levels of registration where they put, I think, KYC 1 up to KYC 5 or something like that. And then if you're at a lower end of the train, you can just walk in and they just more or less register you immediately and you start having access to financial services. And then I think your limit was it 10 or 20,000 or something. But then the people didn't have their name, or some of them didn't even have BVN and all that. But again, because of what now happened in the industry, CBN had to regulate all that and change and to ensure that people now start conforming to what should be done. Because again, yes, there's a time of adoption. Like you mentioned, that the person just wants to make a sale, get the customers in order to meet targets. There's a time of adoption, but that time of adoption, you cannot permanently stay in that state. Over time, you must move to a higher level, and that is what will eventually play out, and that is what has eventually played out in Nigeria. In as much as you want to meet your sales target, it does not mean you should lose sight of what you are supposed to do as an organization that is proper, that is heavily regulated by the regulatory body, which is the Central Bank of Nigeria. And that was some of the things that Fraiser mentioned about regulation and all. For us as an organization, we provide some of these services and solutions to our customers. But again, and Fraser dovetail into that part in terms of compliance. For us, we don't see compliance as an annual audit that you need to do at the end of the year. Why? Because CBN is coming to audit us. The regulatory body is coming to audit us. Then everybody starts running, picking up the files, the Excel sheets to be filling and all. For us as an organization, and which is what we tell our customers, work with our customers to achieve, we don't see adhering to compliance as an activity at the end of the year. We see adhering to compliance and the regulatory controls as part of your lifestyle as an organization, built into your processes. We ensure that when we work with you, that you actually operationalize those processes, you operationalize those controls, you operationalize those regulatory standards that the CBN has given that you must implement in your organization. So you don't just, I want to do an audit at the end of the year and CBN is happy with me. When you operationalize these controls, these processes, these policies, it means from the beginning of the year, you're supposed to do these activities maybe on quarterly basis, on biannual basis, or on monthly basis. We call those activities business as usual activities because this is what the regulatory standards and control says. So you operationalize and you start doing that as at when due. A typical case is what Fraiser also mentioned, your VAPTs, your vulnerability assessment and penetration test. You must ensure that you do them as at when due. And when you work with us and then with the solutions and the products that we have, and one of them which we developed in our organization, our Cybervergent platform, you use the platform to operationalize these processes, these procedures, these controls in your environment, and it becomes a part of your lifestyle. So you don't wait till the end of the year for CBN to come and audit you. It becomes part of your daily activity as your job as an IT person, as a security person, as chief information security officer in the organization. You've operationalized everything and it's part of your lifestyle. So again, these are things that need to be done by organizations. Not that I just want to pass an audit and then move on. I need to live this. I need to work with this. And when I do that, it makes my work, it makes my life much more easier. And when you do that, you know, at each point in time, like Fraiser mentioned, where your gaps are in the organization and where the bad guys may try to come in. You know how to detect and how to ensure that, like Fraiser also mentioned, that you are ahead of them, not that you are playing catch up. Because for an organization playing catch up, you continue to play catch up forever. That's the truth.
Yeah,
Awesome.
and just to add on to where I've gotten the conversation at, I think one of the things that we as CyberGuard Africa we've noticed is so many organizations have policies, but those policies are to pass the check and they do not follow those policies. Just as Bamidel has said, those policies, we need to be able to operationalize all those policies. We've walked into a number of organizations where they've said they have a firewall, they've written a firewall policy, but then when you look at the operationalization of that policy, there is nothing. The firewall does not work. Whatever systems they have do not work. Whatever procedures they say that they are using, they're not there. So being able to operationalize on that is very, very, very key. And having policies, if an organization doesn't have a policy, they need to come down and sit down and write down or draft a policy that will be able to work for the environment, for the systems within the environment, and that will be signed off by every single person. Because some organizations say they have a policy, but it's 100-page documentation. I mean, how many times are you going to look at that documentation, sincerely speaking? So have a document, each policy on its own, even if it's 3 pages. I mean, each employee will easily read 3 pages. Then that becomes an easier way to be able to even stay ahead of the game. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Fraser. Thank you so much, Bamidele. I think this has been a really, really insightful conversation so far. Speaking to the audience, if you have any questions, you can drop it on the chat or you can raise up your hand so we can unmute you and you can ask your question. I saw Valentine raising up his hand. I saw Valentine raising up your hand. But yeah, I'll invite sorry, I just got carried away with the conversation, so I should have invited him sooner. Well, yeah, Cyrus, I'm so sorry. Well, yeah, I'm sure you have some questions for us.
Yeah, sure. Interesting conversation so far. I really enjoyed the back and forth. We spoke about technology, spoke about, implementation of policies. In the Africa ecosystem, we are not short of policies, whether it's finance, whether it's tech. The problem is really the implementations, like, and people following through the regulatory oversight, doing what they should do, as well as the companies themselves, and I love what Fraser said about, having a very simplified policy whereby you know that it is achievable in terms of implementation, not just having something on paper that you're not going to look at and follow through. I also enjoyed the conversation around AI, right? And the automation of AI in terms of, defense against fraud and whatnot. But one of the things I think for me, I would like to know, because let's say as a layman, this fraud issues or this fraud incident, they keep evolving. And many of these attackers, they keep getting creative over time. And, what are things that I feel like, what are these trends, so to speak, that people can expect, changing technology, changing transaction activities, changing the way we use financial services. What are the trends that, that people should be looking out for in terms of fraud, in terms of identity theft, in terms of all these issues? I think I will first start with Fraiser, then Bamidel can also, come in. What are the projections going forward, given new technology keep evolving?
I mean, with now the advancement of AI, I mean, it will be really hard to be able to tell what is real, what is fake. I mean, back in the days, if it was social engineering, we'd probably have looked at grammatical errors, quite a small, tiny issues. But right now, social engineering has become way better because there are no grammatical errors. There's no tiny mistakes that we'd be looking at. And the English is so sweet, it will convince you to be able to do what the fraudster wants. So with that, now then it needs you to be even more keener. If it's an institution, then you need to be able to have probably solutions in place that detect fraudulent emails, fraudulent transactions, even before they happen ahead of the game. I mean, with AI being enabled in various tools, then this can be able to even pick out small details that the human eye will not be able to pick on. Yeah.
Bamidel, want to step in like on that? What are the projections?
Okay, so I'll follow Fraiser's route, and I'll tell you why I'll follow Fraiser's route. So I think it was 2 years ago, there was this story that broke about an organization that so they got this information. It was a video call. They thought it was the CEO and everything that was asking for money to be paid out. And they actually approved the payment. But what happened was that the video that was done by AI. You saw the MD of the organization, the CEO, everything, and the payment was approved. But it was a fake this thing. It was a fraud, and the money left the organization. I think that was
Deep fake.
deep fake. Yeah, it was one of those deep fake videos. That was 2-3 years ago. But then it didn't happen in Nigeria, and we read it. I think some of us laughed about it, we glossed over it. So we started this program at 2 p.m. And so I was holding my phone. You won't believe this, but this is actually my phone. This same scenario was passed, they just passed this information to another platform that I'm in, Emmanuel, the one that I talked about, where our friend was supposed to join this forum. If they passed this information at a minute past 2, the same scenario about the Nigerian company asking for 55 million naira to be approved and everything. This was just an hour ago. The only reason why I'm sure those people, because the video showed the MD and whoever, the only reason why the money did not go through was because somewhere along the line, the CEO and the CFO, they were asking for 100K or something, that you should advance them 100K before releasing the 55 million. So you see, that is a red flag. That is a red flag. That is an anomaly. So that's part of the things that we should watch out for. But what now happens when the CEO or the CFO in the video doesn't ask for 100K? What will you now do? The first thing is, and I think Fraiser has mentioned it, which you also alluded to, AI has come to stay. Deep fakes have come to stay. There will always be the good and the bad of everything. But it also means that we now have to go extra mile to ensure that when these things start to happen, we need to put our own internal policies and internal checks in place. So, for example, if I sit in an organization where the CEO has never sent me a video asking for 100 million or something, the first thing I need to do is, this is already a red flag, it's an anomaly. So I need to go an extra mile and reach out to that CEO or who that person is. I know, yes. So you can say, let me call on phone. His phone number may have been cloned and things like that. But even apart from the phone, as long as you see there's an abnormality, you must go the extra mile. And I'll give this as a typical example. And this happened to me personally. So my cousin's phone was hacked, and surprisingly, the message said I should send, I can't remember the amount, that I should send her some money. So I looked at it. Yes, the money, I can send her the money, it's not an issue. But my cousin has never asked me to send her money. That is one. Two, before my cousin will get to me and ask me to send her money, she has her sisters, because there are 5 of them. She has 4 other sisters that she can reach out to ask for money. So I said, let me hold on and see. The person sent the message again. So what I did was that I went back and I typed a question to the person in my native dialect. So I'm not Yoruba, but I have a Yoruba name. So I typed a question in my native dialect, which I knew my native dialect is Etuno. So I knew my cousin would be able to respond. So I'm doing 2-factor authentication now, or multi-factor authentication. But I knew my cousin would be able to reply in my local dialect. So I sent her the message, asked what's going on, blah, blah, blah. The person didn't respond. I went for the apps again, the person didn't respond. Then I called my cousin's elder sister. This is what is happening, and she confirmed this is what has happened. So the new technologies will come that will always want to break the system. But we as consumers of the technology, we must go the extra mile to also try as much as possible to ensure that whatever we are dealing with, we're actually doing it the right way, and we're actually following the procedures, the protocols, the processes before we actually give approval to certain things. Very soon, and what's going to happen again, there will be new controls, there will be new regulations to curb against deep fakes and to ensure that people are not scammed by deep fakes. So as technology evolves, as technology improves, as technology also increases what happens in the payment space, there will also be regulatory controls to also act as counters to people trying to utilize such things for selfish purposes. So what we must we must keep watch continuously, because as we in the technology space, we are also trying to improve, as the banks are also trying to improve, as the people within the ecosystem are also trying to ensure that they put in steps and procedures for people not to be able to hack and break into their system. People out there, the bad guys, the bad players, they are also improving. And what Fraiser has advised, which like I mentioned, I also follow and I adhere to what he has said, is that the service providers, which are the bankers, the fintechs, everybody in the OFI space, and we, the service providers, we just need to ensure that we are 1, 2, 3, 4 steps ahead of the bad guys all the time. Thank you.
Exactly. Absolutely brilliant. Yeah, we have to be ahead of the game because you mentioned something about deepfake, and there was a video I saw online, and I was about to comment on the video, and when I saw the comment section, people were saying, "Oh, it's a deepfake, it's a deepfake." So just to allude to the point that these things can be as real, as your shadow. So you have to be very careful, and it also points to the conversation around the policies you were talking about, internal policies. So if my boss or the CEO of a company calls and say we need to transfer these, what does the policy say about that kind of transaction, right? Because if the policies, there's a stated policy that this thing cannot happen, and then that there's an anomaly here, and then we need to look at it. So if there's a company that is enforcing or the daily enforces their internal policy, I think it's going to go a long way in protecting their transactions and their services. So I think that's a very a good one. And I think one of the questions, there's a question on the chat box. Let me just say this question because I have a different question in mind, but this question just comes in. So I'll just take. He said, "What are the solutions to solving fraud-related challenges across Africa?" What I think the question mainly is that what are the general straitjacket solution, and put it that way, to solving this kind of fraud-related issues across board, that is specific to Africa ecosystem. Let me start with Bamidel this time.
Okay. Okay. Yes, solutions. I think we've actually dwelt on some of those solutions during the course of the conversation. We've dwelt on some of the solutions, especially when Paul asked about the internal issues.
I think the question is more of Africa, like in the Africa ecosystem.
Yes. Okay. Yes, in the African ecosystem. Again, so first, the first thing is for every, especially in the financial ecosystem, the regulatory bodies are there to ensure that the first thing they do is to write the policies and the procedures and set the controls for each person that is providing financial service or services to any consumer or to any customer. That is the first thing. The regulatory bodies, they are the first set of people or the first set of players that are in this space. So if I'm a consumer and I want to interface with an entity, the first thing I need to do, this entity I'm interfacing with, has it been registered by this regulatory body to provide these services? Yes. So yes, this person has been registered before I go ahead to ensure that, yes, I can carry out whatever transaction I want to do with this entity. That is one. Then again, in the African ecosystem, in as much as the regulatory bodies are the ones controlling it, institutions that subscribe to being regulated by the regulatory bodies, they need to ensure that the standards, the controls that the regulatory bodies have outlined for them to remain in providing services to their customers, that they adhere to those policies. A case in point, if the regulatory control or the regulatory body says, look, in your cybersecurity team, you need to ensure that you have a SIM in place installed in the system, you have a firewall installed in the system, you have two-factor authentication installed in the system, that passwords are reviewed and changed from time to time based on what you've agreed as an organization. I'm just listing some of the things out there. The regulatory body says these are the things you have to adhere to. As an institution, you must ensure that you do that. And that's why we're talking about what's it called? The compliance processes, policies, and procedures that you've implemented, that you're actually complying to those things. And one of the things that Fraiser mentioned, that you have a 100-book policy. If they say, for example, that you need to have a firewall in place, you have a firewall in place. It's not just to tick a box. Do you actually have a firewall in place? Does the firewall meet the standard of the transactions that you're actually having to pass through your infrastructure? You have a SIM in place. Well, what sort of SIM do you have in place? Does the SIM have the capacity to be able to record the number of transactions that you have going through your infrastructure, your system on daily basis? Do you have all those things in place? Data encryption, for example, as well. All those things that have been laid out in terms of the regulatory controls, do you have them in your organization? Have you implemented them fully in your organization? Again, there are also things that have to do with the individuals. Let's talk about internal control again, separation of powers, delegation of duties, controls. We see only one person that is giving approval in everything. That is already a problem. We've heard of, okay, well, we are Nigerians. It was out there in the stories about somebody, how much did they say one person alone? Was it 40 billion or whatever? That a few months ago that was in the papers. And the question you ask yourself, how can one person approve 40 billion? Of course, it happened over time. But it also shows that internally the controls were not there. So you have to put the internal controls in place so that people know their level of approval, and even with the level of approval, that there are checks and balances. So these are some of the things that we need to ensure that they are implemented in Africa, and not only implemented, but also enforced. Implementing is one, enforcing is another thing. So you implement, you enforce, and like I mentioned before, you ensure that in enforcing, they are operationalized. They are operationalized. I think I'll stop here and then Fraiser can add more to it.
Exactly. Brilliant point. Fraiser, you can go ahead, please.
Thank you so much. Definitely brilliant points. I think I just have a few to add on to those. Number one is being able to strengthen identity verifications. I think if we're able to strengthen the identity verification, be it through biometrics or decentralized digital IDs, this starting off from the national governments, then we'll be able to have a lot of, we'll be able to beat defraud. We'll be able to beat fraudulent systems and transactions being able to take place. This also will be able to assist organizations and financial institutions to easily be able to connect to these government institutions and collect the right information because they have the right information through the systems they'll be able to put in place. The other thing also is threat intelligence. I think threat intelligence sharing should be able to happen across all financial institutions, governments. If they're able to communicate, then we'll be able to stay ahead of the game because threat hunters are also gaining a lot of information. I mean, we're seeing cybercrime as a service coming up also. I mean, if cybercrime as a service is coming up, that means that these fraudulent attackers then are selling to each other or to other fraudsters these tools, these resources that they're using, the data that they've probably stolen from these institutions, the financial fraud, finances they've been able to steal. But if we are able to stay ahead of the game, be able to infiltrate even these cybercrime groups, then we'll be able to at least be ahead of the game one way or another. Yeah.
Exactly. I completely agree with that. And I think one of the issues in the Africa ecosystem that I noticed is that sometimes the regulatory bodies are not really in sync with the evolution of technology, and the innovations of, the service providers. So sometimes the regulation could be out of sync with what exactly is needed in the sector. And we have that kind of challenge and whatnot. So like Bamidel mentioned and Fraiser also alluded to the fact that there's a need for professionalization and also the regulatory bodies themselves, will I say, having an updated knowledge, updated information about the trends around, these incidents and these deep fakes and whatnot would really because in Africa, yeah, you could see someone who is not a cybersecurity person, who is not a financial service person, just being in charge of a particular regulatory body and enforcing certain policies and rules that might not be in tune with what are the objectives and what are the guides to ensure that there's safety. But moving forward to just some of the things that I would say is that let's talk about the professionals, right? You are a professional in this space, payment services, financial service, and whatnot. What do you think are like the key takeaways, like the things that a professional must know, like beyond due diligence, beyond the proactive? These are the kind of like say the 7 books or the 7 laws that you have to know, as a professional in this space to safeguard your company, to safeguard your transaction. As from a professional perspective, let me just ask the question, Fraser.
As a professional, I think one of the things is leverage on AI. AI-driven solutions, AI-driven detection solutions, real-time transaction monitoring is something that institutions and professionals should be able to do. And with that, it also comes with a lot of research because even the AI might end up being wrong at some point, but you're the one who knows. So if you do as much research as possible, then you can be able to pick out tiny details that probably the AI solutions might miss or might alter and the likes, because we need to be able to stay ahead of the game. That is the word, stay ahead of the game. And apart from those two, threat hunting is something that we need to be able to do, because all these attackers and fraudsters have their groups where they are able to be able to have these conversations from. if we're able to leverage into those groups and be able to find those attack simulations before they simulate them and before they attack the various financial institutions, then we can be able to stay, we can be able to even secure those systems that we're protecting even before they hit them. Therefore, being able to protect and safeguard our environment and our the crown jewels that we hold. The other thing also is being able to do security audits and assessments, not just looking at it from probably say you did the last pen test or vulnerability assessment 3 months ago, and you have to wait for another 6 months. I mean, things change, technology changes. Then if we're able to do security assessments, both internally and from an external point of view, then you'll be able to at least safeguard and find those loopholes that are going to be used. The other thing also, I think it's something that we're seeing as a service being offered, for example, at Cyberguard Africa. Once you do a pen test, do you go again to be able to check that the loopholes you said or mentioned during the last pen test, have they really been closed? Because we've seen institutions that we've walked in and done pen test for, and they said they did close a specific loophole. However, because they closed that, it opened another 2 more other loopholes for us to be able to probably leverage to gain access into their systems. So being able to verify that, yes, you've done the pen test, the issues have been closed, and they have been truly closed, and they don't lead to other attacks. That's something that needs to be done, especially by the financial institutions. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. Brilliant, very brilliant. Bamidele, please, you want to chip in something on that?
Yes, thank you, Fraiser. And to echo Fraiser as well, first is that all of us need to have at the back of our minds, and I think we've already embraced that technology has come to stay. We cannot run away from it. And it's technology that we can use to make our jobs much more better. And what is talked about AI, it's the truth. AI has also come to stay. The world has embraced AI, and we need to start learning to live with AI. But there was something he also mentioned about, and he gave a typical example. Carrying out a VAPT for a customer, and then you've seen some vulnerabilities, and you tell the customer to go ahead and do remediation. It's not, even when they do the remediation, what's it's supposed to happen is to come back again and do another pen test to ensure that whatever has been remediated properly, so that what he mentioned, that it doesn't open another loophole somewhere else. But when you actually, at times when you propose this to some customers, they say you just want to come and make money again. The end goal is not just to make money. The end goal is to ensure that the service that you are providing to your customers, you are actually providing the right service, and that, yes, internally as well, you are secured. So there's a process that actually should be followed in closing out every single vulnerability, and when a remediation has been done, to ensure that process has been closed out. So for me, as I said, I follow and I adhere to what Fraiser has mentioned. All he said, payments in companies, banks, and all should adhere to these things. And it's key, very key, that everything we say that we are doing, we actually operationalize. We actually operationalize, and not just do it because we want to pass an audit. There's this saying in Nigeria that we go to schools to pass exams, but not to really learn what is happening in school, but to say, yes, I've passed the exam, I have the certificate. Come and implement what you learn, it becomes a challenge. But in this case, let's not use that mindset again, that I just want the certificate that I've passed it. You must operationalize and start living it. And again, like I mentioned, there are tools that are available. In Cybervergent, we've developed our own product, the Cybervergent platform, that helps you operationalize so many controls, from governance to risk to privacy and security. You operationalize all these across board, and it makes your life easier. From the words of one of my fellow executives in Cybervergent, he says he loves to live a soft life. You can actually live a soft life if you actually do the things that you're supposed to do properly. Thank you.
And if you listen to the professionals, if you listen, because many people say things like, "Oh, it's too hard. I can't go to the process. I can't, this KYC, this KYC, this KYC. I just feel one. I just feel that." I think if you listen to the professionals, your life will be softer and will be easier. So I think it's a very wonderful conversation. I really learned a lot, and I think other listeners, other attendees learned a lot. I'll be handing over back to Emmanuel. Thank you so much, the speakers. I really appreciate the feedback. Thank you so, so much.
Thank you too, Cyrus.
Right. Thank you so much, Cyrus, Bamidele, Fraiser. Thank you so much. This has been really, really insightful. And I think we learned a lot. And I see this more as a conversation starter, like a wetting ground for even more deeper conversations and meaningful partnerships that cuts across borders. We have people joining us from across Africa in this webinar, and very, very focused on people in financial services that are most likely affected by this issue of payment fraud and fraud in financial services. So it's a really, really amazing session. And if you've been on this call with us, or if you're just joining us, this is Finance in Africa, a sister publication to TechPoint Africa and Energy in Africa. And we cover stories, news, updates on finance in Africa. It's very, very descriptive. So we don't need to explain what we do and what we are. And this has an exciting session on payment fraud, what works in 2024. We've talked about a bunch of things on internal mechanisms and policies, AI, and all of that. So we've had Fraiser and Bamidele break down a bunch of things that, I don't know, they've been really, really brilliant. And if you want to hear more from them, just send me a DM so that we can drag them here once again. But please follow us on Twitter and to be first to know when we have more updates like this. And you can also visit on our website. So you can follow us, Finance in Af on Twitter, follow Energy in Africa for the business of energy. If you're interested in the oil sector, if you're interested in the power sector, the business of it, we don't go too technical. And of course, if you want to learn more about AI, emerging tech, and startups in Africa, visit TechPoint.Africa. So I think with that, we're coming towards the end of this. I saw a question, I think, okay, maybe you guys can just address. Someone is asking, what are those companies that help with enforcement? So what are those companies that provide enforcement and operationalization of fraud-related solutions as a service? So yes, we have CyberGuard and Cybervergent here already. So if you guys want to add anyone, you guys are free to add. But those are the only two I know for the purpose of this webinar.
Yeah, just to add to that, I know at Cyberguard Africa, we're currently developing a number of solutions to assist especially African countries and Africans at a whole. We've noted a number of missing point areas that we're trying to work on. Definitely, we'll have a conversation with Bamidel on the side and see probably other ways we can be able to collaborate together. But anyway, yeah, we do have a number of solutions, so definitely within the course of the year, we'll be rolling them out.
Awesome. Bamidele.
Yeah, thank you, Manuel, and thank you to everybody on the forum and also for the question. Yes, at Cybervergent, yes, we pride ourselves as a one-stop shop for anything that has to do with cybersecurity and digital trust, and that's what more or less we've done for the last since we started out as an organization, from our days as InfoPrive, now the Cybervergent. So you can talk to us. And like I mentioned, we have our flagship product, which is actually in the market, the Cybervergent platform, currently available as a SaaS platform. And we have customers in Nigeria, West Africa, East Africa, down to the Middle East and North Africa. So it's easily available for people that that need to know how to operationalize these controls in space of governance, risk, privacy, and security. The platform is there, and I'm one touch away. You can reach me and we can have further conversations on it. And yes, I'm definitely going to be hitting Fraiser up, because I've seen that, yes, there are some things we need to do together. And Emmanuel, I've sent you a message. Please send me his phone number. We need to definitely take this further.
Sure thing. Yeah, this is a really amazing one. And please, you can feel free to reach out to me if you need to ask any questions of our speakers. And I'm sure we'll find a way to get you in contact with them. And of course, I'm glad to see that Fraiser and Bamidel are forming a budding partnership. I'm going to call it a cult from this. So yeah, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much, Fraiser. And with that, 3:30 on the dot, we've come to the end of the session. Thank you so much, and see you in the next one.
Thank you too. Thank you, Emmanuel, for inviting me. I really appreciate it. And thank you, everyone, for joining. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Thank you, Bamidel, and thank you, everyone, as well.
Thank you, Fraiser. Thank you. All right. See ya.